Today is another series in our Preparing for Guided Pathways, and today's focus is on developmental education. Doctors Han and Pollard, who are going to lead us through this, open for questions and answers, I believe, towards the end. And of course, this is a huge topic across the district, and we'll have more as we get closer to the implementation. So I'll let Dr. Han take it away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm glad you came to see this. We're going to not get into the extreme details on this with just the 30 minutes, so it'll be kind of more of an overview, but we want to make sure that we have some time for questions at the end. But like Doug said, this is the Guided Pathways Developmental Studies session. And so I just wanted to start by showing you this slide, which I'm sure you've seen before, our major 5 components of our Guided Pathways. And of course, wanted to mention the tri-chairs and the campus reps that are doing such an excellent job. And you see my name is up there too, so I'm part of that. But I just wanted to say the developmental ed piece really fits in well with particularly with the first 2 of these, certainly in preparing the students in terms of getting them to that college level classes in math and English and reading as quickly as possible. And then engaging, I think it has a lot to do with the engaging piece, in that once we have them in the right classes, that particularly when they're taking these co-requisite courses, that we give them that support that they need to be successful. If we're putting them in a college level class that they're not necessarily ready for, but we give them the support to get them through it successfully. So what are developmental studies? Well, they're developmental math, reading, and writing. They're simply pre-college courses that serve as refresher content for students who do not have the college-level math, reading, and writing prerequisite skills. Courses do not provide credit for any degree or certificate program. They don't transfer toward a bachelor's degree. They're solely for students to brush up on their high school level skills that they're lacking. And you wouldn't think many of our students place into developmental studies, especially the ones coming right out of high school that just graduated. Wrong. So just to show you some data, in 2016, this is district data, district-wide, 49% of all incoming students successfully completed college-level English in their first year. Only half of the incoming students actually completed their first college-level English class during their first year. And if you think that doesn't sound very good, 33%, only a third of all the incoming students successfully completed college-level math during their first year. So that's the first 2 semesters, only a third of them were able to complete their college-level math successfully. Breaking it down into some subgroups here, only 27% of the district's students were considered college ready. So all the incoming freshmen, only 27% were deemed college ready for math, reading, and English. Of that, or not of that, but 14% of all African American students were college ready. Saying that another way, 86% of all incoming African American students were placed into either developmental math, reading, or writing, or a combination of those. And then finally, only 10% of non-traditional age group students were college ready. That one makes a little bit more sense because they're older and maybe it's been a long time since they've been to high school. But these are the kind of numbers that cause us to really take a look at this and say, you know, we got to do better. So why? Why are we doing this developmental ed reform? Well, here's what happens. Many students get stuck in the developmental study sequences, especially developmental math, and the frustration of not progressing toward their coursework in their major causes them to drop out of college. It's just the real facts. We must have a plan in place to expedite students through their developmental course sequence so they can start taking those courses that do count and that are required for their major as quickly as possible. So, more data. Now, this is PVC data. Can you guys see this? I actually have this in a handout form if you want to take a look at it. But here's what this is. If you take a look at the very top, There were 367 students that started in Math 08X, which is the lowest level math that we have, for the very first time in fall 2015. We have 367 students in Math 08X. Of that 367, 276 successfully completed 08X within 5 semesters later. This data is 5 semesters after they started in 2015. If you look at the little thing at the very bottom, it says that this is data from spring 2018. So 5 semesters has gone by when we're reporting this. Of the 367, only 175 actually completed the next level course, which is 09, okay, successfully. Of the 367 originally, only 90 have successfully completed a course higher than 09X. This is 5 semesters later. And finally, the one that's most telling, only 19% of the original group that started in 08 have successfully completed either 140 or 150, which is the lowest level college level class that they would take for their major, only 19%. So that is really troubling. And so we did the same thing for students that started in 09X. Now 09X, we use the X because we have 090, 091, or 092. But students that started in the second level developmental, which is the level up from 08, there were basically 400 that started there, and only 31% of those made it successfully to their first college level class. So it's not good. And this is the same as the other 9 colleges as well. We're all kind of in the same boat here. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Well, there's 3 initiatives that you need to know about that are being mandated across the district that are designed to accelerate this developmental students to college level work. All these initiatives are going to be implemented effective spring 19. Number 1, high school GPA for placement. I'm sure you've heard about this, that it's coming. We're actually using that GPA for placement as we speak for these incoming students for the spring semester. All new students who graduated from high school within the last 10 years will be able to place directly into a college level course if their overall unweighted GPA from high school is greater than 2.6. Number 2, enrollment into their first level, college level course. We've all made a commitment that we provide the opportunity for all new students to enroll in their first college level course no later than their second semester, regardless of their major program. Right?
So that means, okay.
It means if we
So
give them the
they're going to-
opportunity,
They're in 082, they
Yep.
test in 082.
and they're a STEM major, so they need to go all the way through those courses. We have a commitment that they're in college algebra by their second semester, if they start in 08. And we give them the opportunity to do that,
Right.
not a guarantee. And you'll see how we're planning on doing that in just a second. Number 3 is called a suite of support. This is where we define and create and facilitate shared practices necessary to accomplish number 2. Because you can't just all of a sudden do number 2 without some strategies of how are we going to do that, right? Because right now it takes 4 semesters for a student to get to college algebra if they start in 08. So we've got to cut that in half. So here's the chart that shows you our GPA for placement. Over here on the left, if they're at least 2 years of high school, so like this works for dual enrollment also, as long as they've been at least 2 years in high school, but no more than 10 years out of high school. If they have a 3.0 or above, they can place right into English 101 or Math 150 or 187 or Reading CRE 100. If they're in that 2.6 to 2.99 range, they can place also into English 101, Math 140, 14X or 120, or Reading 100. If they're below 2.6, there's not enough evidence to show that it predicts college level completion, so they take the Accuplacer or the Right Placer for placement at that point, if they're below 2.6. So we're having students come and bring their high school transcripts, and unofficial or official, and if they're in one of those ranges, we're directly placing them into those courses. No need to take Accuplacer.
So Mike, I have just a quick question. So do we have a system, we meaning the system, not just PD, to track students who are in those 3 buckets, if you will?
You mean how they do in those
Right.
courses? Yes.
Right, and what,
Yes.
so ultimately, someone
Absolutely.
below 2.6 could actually take the Accuplacer and test into Math 150, whatever.
Right, right.
So we have a way to track those to
Yes.
see what bucket is most successful, is I guess my question.
Right, right. And by the way, just because their GPA might put them into, say, the middle category, the 2.7, and so it places them into 120, and they think that if they could take Accuplacer and place higher than that, they have the liberty to do that. So just because their GPA places them somewhere, they can choose to take Accuplacer for a higher placement. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. So somebody can have a beautiful GPA, but they haven't really taken anything. You know, they've
Right,
taken
and
bare minimum in
that's-
science, math, and
Right.
so we could still be setting them up for failure
That,
because they've been taking really basic courses and acing them, so they have you know, how do we plan for that?
okay,
Because
so that would
be
be
my only concern.
this is version 1.0, right? Which is something that we can start with immediately because
Sure.
it's easy, right? But we all know that you can have a student that has a 3.0 that has made all C's in math, but they made A's in everything else. And we're going to put them in college algebra, right? You're right. We're setting up for failure in that case. So what we're planning on doing version 2.0 is maybe not only looking at the GPA, but what is their highest level math course or English course that they took in high school, and what grade did they make? So we're going to throw in some more parameters in there, and so this chart will be more complicated.
Okay.
We're getting there, but this is just the first step, just to have something there that we can start with.
So some students want to, they test in a range, and they want to take the most basic. If they have a higher GPA, can they take a lower level?
Yes, we can always let them, there are some students that come in here and they say, I want to start at the beginning. I don't even want to take the Accuplacer test. I've been out of math for a while. I just want to start at the bottom. I don't know if we can deny them the Accuplacer test, but whatever they make, we can put them certainly in the bottom. So they can choose to go lower than what their placement says, or they can try to take Accuplacer and go higher if they're, whatever their GPA is.
Hi,
Hey,
Mike.
Vivian.
I just have a quick question, and I have not heard this around the district, but I know that because advisors are inputting that GPA, and it kind of overrides the Accuplacer score, but are we tracking the students that are choosing to go the GPA route versus the Accuplacer?
Not that I know of. It's just so new that we probably should have that discussion and have that process so we can track them. But
I think we should, because we want to track whether it's effective, because it is on a national level, but how do we know at
it's
Maricopa level?
working here, right? That's a good point.
You
Very
might
good.
want to let the advising council know, so they can bring it to the DevEd council.
Well, I'm on that council. so
You
I'll
are
let
on
you
it,
know.
okay.
I'll
So
let
this
you
is
know.
just a slide that shows, like, we're going to have a variety of different students that might need strong support or medium support or light support. If we're going to put them in these college level classes that may not be quite ready for a strong support, some of the things that we might consider as a first semester experience, contextualized to their field of interest, success coaching, and dedicated advisors and counselors to that particular student. If they need medium support, maybe support given alongside their college level classes, co-requisite support, required advising, and academic coaching. And then if they just need a little bit of light support based on their GPA or whatever they placed into, ongoing embedded support is needed, consistent advising, and workshops, learning teams, and support, study groups. So regardless of their starting point, our idea is that they connect with their field of interest on day one, and that their college level courses are within their first year. And hopefully, we'll have many more students that get to their goal quicker. Because what's happening is they get mired in the developmental courses, and they're not able to take any courses in their major because they're so inundated with these developmental courses. And if we could just work it out where they can start taking their major courses quicker, I think that'll create their interest and they won't drop out on us. All right, so this is what math is doing, okay? If you look at the top, you see the 3 different GPAs. If they have a far right, GPA greater than or equal to 3.0, and if they need 140, then they immediately take 140. If they need 150, they immediately take 151. That's the 2 math courses depending on their major. If they're basically a STEM major, they take 150. If they're liberal arts major, they take 140, or non-STEM, let's say. If their GPA is in that mid-range, 2.6 to 2.99, if they're a STEM major, they will take 120 and then 150 by their second semester. But if they're a liberal arts major, we're just going to go ahead and put them right into the 140. And then the group over here to the left are the ones that have a GPA below 2.6. Those are the ones that are going to take Accuplacer. If they're non-STEM, then they would take 081 and then 140. If they are a STEM major, they would take this special course 090. This is a new course that is 5 credits. And what it's doing is we're combining 08 and 09 in the same course. So it's basically 09 with review of 08 in the same course. So that's our way to get them to double up, so to speak. And then from there, they go to Math 150, which is a streamlined course with focus on prep for trig and calc and 1-2x just in time. So what that means is it's basically college algebra with a review of the prerequisite course, intermediate algebra. Okay. So what we're doing is we're combining 2 courses together as a co-requisite course. And we're giving them that support, but what we're choosing to do is just add more credits to the course so that we would have the time to do that. Some of the colleges are doing other kinds of supports outside of class, but we're looking at it as the teacher in the classroom is the one that should have that experience to help them, get those reviews. So we're just increasing what maybe was a 3 credit hour class is now a 5 credit hour class, and those extra 2 credits are going to be where the review comes in. So this way, that student that places into OA, the lowest level, will get to college algebra their second semester, whereas now it takes 4 semesters to get there. So that's how we're able to double up.
Actually,
Question?
she had
Just a quick question. Since this is a new Math 150 and it's not traditional college algebra 151 or whatever that is supposed to be,
Right.
I don't know. Transferring 151 is a standard course at like
Right.
ASU, U of A. Will 150 transfer the same way?
Right.
Has that been?
This slide is previous to what the Math Instructional Council did last week. So I need to update this. We've created these brand new courses, 155 and 156. That's 5 credit hour college algebra 155 and 6 credit hour college algebra 156 that has the review in it. So these are brand new courses so that you won't get confused with the 151 and 150. So we're creating these brand new courses that are not currently on books that are going to be the co-requisite courses. So that way we can still have our courses that we have now that are just the standalone college algebra and the standalone, 09 class. But the co-requisite courses will have those unique numbers and unique prerequisites. So we're really trying to think this through, and because we're all in this together, all 10 colleges. And so that's what math is doing. So now if Steph will come up and talk about what English and reading are doing, and then she's also going to talk about the, what's the last slide? Professional development, yes. Thank you.
So I sit on the DevEd Council. We meet once a month, and I'm also a developmental education content lead for English, and we meet every Friday. So this is ongoing. This is the foundation that Mike has laid out is perfectly accurate. It's really good for math. But the global picture is more involved, and so I'm going to take over from there and kind of talk about where, as a district, we're going with multiple measures. Because right now I wouldn't call what we're doing multiple measures. It's another single measure using GPA. However, it is a multiple measure if your GPA is under 2.6. So if you're under 2.6, then you have the option to take the Accuplacer, and it's a multiple measure for you. For the people with a 2.6 or above, there's no multiple measure. But what we have in the works, this is the most recent development as of this Tuesday's meeting, we're looking as a council to look at ACT scores within the discipline, so a math ACT, reading ACT, English ACT, to help more accurately place students, but this won't be able to be implemented for the spring. So this is the 2.0 or the 1.5, you know, probably what we hope to have ready for maybe fall placement. And same for GED, especially to help the students who are beyond 10 years out, who don't have a high school GPA, or they did the GED route. Now there's a table we're working on that says if your GED score was this in math, you can be placed here, reading here, and writing. So the other trick on that district is working on is SIS does have the capacity to house this information. Right now it's about who's putting it in, whose responsibility to put it in, where to look for it once it's in. So this is part of the training that will have to be ongoing as we go forward. The ACT and the GED work very well because students will put in, they want their score sent to PV, so it comes directly here, so we don't have to have any of the legal articulation, data sharing agreements, which has been something that's holding a few of the things up right now. As of fall 2019, and this is specific to PV, and, well, I'm going to back that up. Actually, for the spring, each college was given the latitude to keep 091, 081, whatever we were doing. The only thing that had to change for spring was the GPA placement. In the fall, none of the colleges should be offering English 081 or any English 091 as a standalone course. And at the moment, the English Instructional Council is working on creating a new course like math is done that's probably going to have a 100 tag so that it can transfer, because right now 091, 081, they don't transfer, they get nothing when they go forward. So they're looking at probably calling it English 100 Composition Lab. There could be a 1-credit lab, so it could be English 101 with a 1-credit lab. It could be English 101 with a 3-credit lab, depending on student need. And if you think back to Mike's slide about the light, the medium, and the heavy support, probably the 3-credit lab would be the heavy support. The medium support would be the 4-credit option. And then light support is what we should be doing anyway in our classes for all students, regardless of their GPA, regardless of their placement. Light support means good instruction and supplemental instruction on top of that.
Stephanie,
Yes.
what about the students who come in and say, I'm not ready for 101, I want to take a review course first, and they just truly want to take a review course? Is there going to be anything offered to them?
The composition lab, they could be
But the
counseled,
lab is
so we
also
could
attached
have,
to a 101?
huh?
Is the lab always attached to a 101?
It would be,
Which means it would not be basically an hour and 15-minute class, it would wind up being an hour, 2 hours.
whatever that calculation
So a
is.
standalone,
for-
if they want to review a standalone, that's not an option given to
There will
them.
not be a standalone option for those students. But when we get to the next one, the last bullet there, so I'll skip down to answer your question. Shared practices, that's the document that's being disseminated district-wide. It's going through, we work on it every single meeting and refine it and consolidate language, make sure we have consensus. And those go down to the VPAs and the VPSAs, and that's our common language. One of our goals, it basically articulates what's the goals for developmental education in the context of guided pathways. And one of the shared practices is to come up with some needs that are like that we need to have an option that's not credit loaded. All right, so for students who recognize they need more help, they either can't afford, they don't need, technically based on their placement mechanisms, to take a 4-credit or a 6-credit, but they still want it. It's about having that option out there. What that option looks like right now, we don't know. That would fall under the suite of support that Mike was talking about, where it's in development. We are in brainstorming mode, piloting mode, research mode, and we're trying to figure out what that would be, and that would be one of those options, where we take, for example, the grammar workshops that we've offered here on campus for years. Once upon a time, they were very popular and highly attended. More recently, we've had a difficult time getting students to go to that. we're looking at why that's happening and what we can do. The other possibility for that is, in the past, we've only offered that for 1 week. You know, we have our 5 workshops, this is the week you do it, there's an afternoon time, there's an evening time. Maybe we need to figure out, and again, it's a manpower issue and a pay and a loading and everything else issue, but how do we offer that more frequently? You know, instead of just a one-shot deal, can we get them videotaped and put them on a common Canvas course? Can we offer them in person 4 times a semester instead of just the one shot? Who's going to do it? That type of thing. Maybe offer them later in the semester, because a lot of times by the time they realize they need common therapy, we already had the workshop and it's not there. So, so those options, the non-credit, so that they're not co-recs, they're not attached to having to pay for it, it's really about a philosophy of being able to provide these students services they need, not necessarily in the class, but separate from the class and not as a you have to pay for it option. Does that answer your question, Pam, a little bit?
Somewhat. I also, my concern with something like that is the students who need it the most are the ones who usually don't attend things like that, whereas the students who are fighting to get things done are the ones that are there. So it serves the needs of one demographic, but not another.
One of the conversations that we've had at these different levels is that idea of that word mandatory, that instructors may have to build into their syllabi statements that say you could be required to have to take this and have points attached to it, have a consequence. I don't like the word consequence, but you know, some incentive to get them there so that they are getting the services that they need. All right, and I think Mike alluded to this. This is to give students the opportunity to complete college level work in the first semester. Not all of them will, that's the reality. But we're trying to recapture as many as we can because the old system wasn't working. Very clearly wasn't working. When you look at completion rates, I didn't put a slide together for English, but it's just as dismal, sadly. About 33–40% of students who traditionally have tested into English developmental courses never finish English 101, 102. That's a problem. So this is designed to kind of compensate for that and try something new, something that's working across the country. The other thing that I skipped over is that there's a possibility that we'll create a second new course that would be an integrated reading and writing course. So instead of having to take reading 081 and English 091 or English 081, it would be one course. So now instead of having to take 2 or 3 courses, all of that content, all of that curriculum will be consolidated into one course. And when you think about the chart that Mike had up about the heavy support, that would fall into the heavy support. So the students who are placing, regardless of the mechanism for which they're placing, go into that lowest category. That's where some of these alternate courses come into play, because we still need to shorten their sequence, and we still need to increase their likelihood of success, but not with a lot. I mean, we're looking at 3 English, 3 math, maybe 4 math, 3 reading for students that were traditionally placing at the lowest levels. You know, so if we're looking at 10 or 11 courses before they can ever get to their field of interest, their majors, and it wasn't a high success rate when they were doing the sequence, then we needed to do something different.
How do we explain this to students? Because if I'm like a freshman coming in and I'm looking at, why do I have to take a 6-credit class and that person gets to go through with 3? You know, I'm looking at cost and time. Why am I mean, how are we explaining that to them? Because that I can see would be.
I don't think that conversation necessarily has to be different than the one that we've had in the past, where if you came in and by Accuplacer you placed into 081, and the friend who took the test with you the same day was placed into 101, it was a cut and dried. Here were the measures, here's where you fell, this is what you need. And at least now with the GPA, if you're below the 2.6, you can challenge that and say, actually, kind of like, I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, it might have been Lynn, I did great in math, or bad in math, well, either way, so my overall GPA is okay, but course specific is something we want to look at down the line. We didn't have the opportunity to iron out all the wrinkles because we were told as a DevEd council This happened spring 19, period. That, we didn't have that opportunity. It came as a shock to the DevEd Council when we came back in August, and we were said, this is what we're gonna do. So now what we're working at, and I'm not disputing the fact that it needed to happen, change needed to take place to serve the students better, but that means there's these little wrinkles. All the questions you have are very valid, very important questions, but that's what we're working on now. That's what we're working on.
Steph, this suite of support idea, is that a model for a national model, or how did they arrive
The
at
suite of
that?
support is our terminology,
Okay.
but it's based on the national research. So the idea of having embedded tutoring, the co-requisite models, ALPs, the accelerated learning paths, all of these are based on national models. What we're putting into the one bucket, all of the strategies that we can use, the light, the medium, and the heavy support, that is all suite of support. That's all the strategies we're pooling together from what other colleges are doing. I know in our English division meetings, we're talking about what we can do to add to the suite of support. What can we do locally to help our students in the meantime, knowing that starting in spring, we're going to have students in 101 who may not traditionally have been placed into 101, and now they are. At the same time, we have students who are currently taking English 091, don't have to pass it this semester. Not that I'm announcing that, but they then can still take English 101 if their GPA is 2.6 and higher. So. The other discussion that'll need to happen is adapting instructional loads. There's going to be a need to figure out, do we still have to teach 5 classes? How do you load for 4 credit hour English and 6 credit hour English and 6 credit hour math? It's going to be a different conversation. That's just another one of the wrinkles. Okay. Last, unless there's other questions here, we whoops, wrong way. I never get a clicker. So, obviously this is going to come with the need for significant professional development. And so all I did on this slide was put some of the opportunities, some of the preliminary topics that are coming up for discussion in our meetings, which is universal design for learning, because that's just good teaching. And there's a misnomer that universal design for learning is about DRS students, or disabled students, or any students needing services, and that's not the case. Universal design for learning is for all students. It's just good instruction. Multiple means of representation. How can we help students and scaffold students? So it's just really good teaching, training that all instructors, regardless of your content area, need to have. Contextualization for other disciplines, because as you've seen on some of the slides, instead of having reading 081 and reading 100, for example, we may now just have reading 100, but it's contextualized within a biology course, or it's contextualized within psychology. But obviously that needs development too. Maricopa Summer Institute, we've had for a number of years, and that's always been a developmental education focus. This summer, it's going to be devoted to coming up with a suite of support ideas, models for that, and rewriting curriculum that hasn't been accomplished during the spring semester. And learning communities, all right? Guided Pathways is pushing us toward, in a good way, learning communities. And learning communities and developmental students have always been a good mix. We've always had a traditional set of courses where it was CPD 150 tied to English or other disciplines, and the success rate in that is higher. A team of us went to Evergreen this summer for learning communities, and the data is very rich about how you can do that. Those are some of the other ideas, but again, that requires professional development. So, that's all I have.
Thank you so much. So, I know this affects other disciplines besides the math and English and reading. Some of the other folks in other disciplines might be getting a little bit nervous about, well, if they're going to be taking all this math and all this English their first semester, what about my course? They're not going to be taking my course. I'm going to have a dip in enrollment. That may be true, but I think it will only happen that first semester, because I think we'll have more students that will then go forward than before. So you'll still get your students. It might be a one-semester delay before you get them, but you'll get more students than you do now, just one semester delay. Does that make sense? So you gotta give us one semester to get these guys all to their college level classes, rather than getting stymied in developmental classes semester after semester, and just realizing at some point, look, I can't believe I'm still taking stuff that I had in high school. Why am I doing that? Why can't I get to college level? And they just get frustrated, and they realize maybe college is not for me, and we lose them. So, questions?
So what is in place right now? Someone who's in the classroom, 5 classes a semester, embedded in the students. I know that a lot of times we have students who come from high school, and it's not their ability to learn. It is a bit of culture shock coming from a high school mentality to a college mentality, and realizing that homework does matter, deadlines do matter, and that you're not going to get 2 essays to write the last week of school to bring your grade up. So now that we're not going to put them in a developmental course, we're going to put them in 101, and they fail. What is in place to make sure that next semester, and I know you talk about the suite of support and embedded tutors, but again, they didn't use that the first time. What is in place to give them a different experience the second time they take it? Whether it is now mandatory becomes a whole different ballgame. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, we're hoping that they take a course like CPD, right, and AAA along with this, so that they learn these kind of things. But that's something we're always fighting with the students about. We're always, all students have a culture shock when they come from high school to college level. They have no clue how much time outside of class that they need to spend to be successful. Because in high school, they didn't necessarily have to spend that time outside of class. Because their course was a whole year, they did most stuff in class, they had extracurricular activities outside of class, but it wasn't doing math homework necessarily. So we always have that education with the students in all classes. So that's not going to change. It's just...
Right, but now instead of not passing a class that doesn't transfer and really doesn't show on their transcript, they're not passing a class that does transfer, that will be on their transcript. So what are we doing the next semester to make it different?
Well, that's where the suite of supports come in. We hope that that's what makes the difference. That extra support they're getting, the extra credits that they're getting, that more class time, more instructor involvement, success coach. We're hiring a math success coach that will be dealing with these students on a case-by-case basis that are at risk. So I don't know.
So in terms of the CPD and the success, one of the things we brainstormed are we have 3 different pillars for the suite of support. There's academic support. Then we also said there's an area of basic needs. We're also talking about students who need childcare, need bus fare, so we're very cognizant of needs that they have that are not just academic suite of support. The suite of support encompasses 3 different areas. And one is the CPD suite of support, one is the basic needs suite of support, and the other is the academic suite of support. So all of these are in play. And again, they're at baby stages. I realize that. And that's not a lot of comfort come spring. But I would like to say for fall, there's a lot in the pipeline.
And there's also the other discussions that we've had in these things is, tutoring's changing, instruction's changing, how we're working with equity gap is changing, how we're doing orientation is changing.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of other things that will be changing that hopefully, when you put it all together, a holistic thing, it should change. The numbers should be less that aren't succeeding. There's also something, and we haven't even talked about as a college, about how we have to change. Now everybody in the college has to teach students a little bit about time management and about how to do, we know where they're coming from. Like you said, they might not have ever had that teaching in high school, and now everything is new. And so we haven't really talked about that as a college, about that transition. Now we all have to look at, what does that mean when they like, yeah, the writing's not for me, or this isn't for me. The food insecurity. I mean, there's all of these things that as a college, I think we can look at.
I think there's 2 points of clarification for that, and that is the perfect example of universal design for learning, is building into your already existing courses, whatever content area that is, not just these 3, but helping students study, helping students to break down your textbook for your content area, and relying on our reading instructors to help you with that. They're more than happy to come in and do that. To teach goal setting within the context of your own class. And all of that it's not just something they need to take in CPD, but it's everybody's responsibility to teach within the context. The contextualization means just that. All of these things that students need to be successful need to be taught by every instructor in every course that's taught. So, Christine.
I think this is really helpful because considering spring is right around the corner and then fall, I have just a couple. I also have to add that we want to reinforce the general education learning outcomes and personal development and our work with critical thinking. I'm sorry. It's on record.
Yes, it is.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Were you?
Yeah,
We are
there's
friends
there's a
again.
goal-setting GDA dimension
Mhm.
that could be embedded in every class,
Exactly.
right? I'm sorry, you just
I
did it.
planted him here.
Yeah.
No, but Seth, my question is related to the 100 course that will be a supplement or accompany to 101. And you talked about rethinking or revising the competencies. Is that, okay. So that will mean that someone, I'm thinking the English Instructional Council and then maybe MSI will work on that and we will have that in our possession at some point over the summer just to prepare for, because that could really change things for fall.
The intent is to have that ready by the end of the summer and that information disseminated, shared, workshops, local on the campus or centrally throughout the district to bring forth that new information and materials to accompany it. That would be
I do have I'm a little bit like Sandy Zapp in the way that I've already started packing boxes for the carpet. I'm already worried about my fall syllabi. And I could be dead tomorrow, but these worries are valid.
They are valid, but it's a leap of faith at this point is all I can say, is that it's a lot of positive change, but there's a lot of unknowns, and that makes none of us real comfortable. But if you keep the end goal of student completion and success in mind, then we can kind of tolerate the little hiccups along the way until we get them figured out. I have faith that that's going to happen. I know what we were doing wasn't working, so we have to do something else. But so it's also an issue of trust. You're going to have, and it's hard. I mean, as division chair, I'm looking at a spring schedule that it's a guess. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how many ALPs. We weren't previously collecting GPA data. We're making a guess based on the national data that says at least 40% of students who were being placed into Dev Ed could have been successful directly in a college class. That's nationwide research. So there's a lot of good coming here, but we're just going to have to be patient and trust that the people working on it are doing what they can do. Well, Norma's had her hand up. And then
Okay, so my question is, what about adjunct faculty? How are we going to bring them up to speed?
That's a fantastic question. I think it's going to, I hate to throw division chairs out of there, but I think it's going to have to fall on them, at least initially, to provide the changes, provide the training, provide multiple sessions, maybe our evening supervisors as well, people who have face-to-face contact with our faculty and bring them on board with this. There's only so much that you can do by email, and people don't read mail, and they don't always check their mailboxes, so I think it's that one-on-one human contact.
Well, I mean, they definitely are knowledgeable of the content. So now we're just saying, okay, instead of teaching a 3-credit-hour class, you're gonna teach a 5-credit-hour class that includes a review of the previous course, and we're gonna have it all laid out for them. We're gonna have it, the coursework will all be done and canned, basically, for them to do. So as far as in math, I don't see that much of a problem. We need to make sure it match the right level of teaching to the right adjunct.
And what I was also thinking about, though, was the goal setting, the time management, all the other aspects that go into that teaching that's
Well,
gonna be.
I think that's where I'll put out the shameless plug. We're going to need to have incentives for our adjuncts to come to our learning week sessions, to division meetings. They don't traditionally get paid for coming to those things, so something to bring them in so that they're exposed to it on a regular basis. They need it just as much as the rest of us.
Renee?
Oh, just didn't know if you wanted to mention, because you just referred to how so many students tested, that were in Dev Ed, tested, well, the GPA was higher. So they would have been placed in a 101 class according to their GPA.
You mean the little informal thing that
Right,
you
the little
did?
that you just, well, that's what I wanted to know if you wanted to mention that informal, because you just mentioned this other previously national. So.
Well, now that you brought it up, I wasn't, but earlier this semester, trying to alleviate some of the panic that we were having for scheduling and not having any collected data to do this, I think Christine, Renee, I did this, we kind of pulled our classes, but we did it anonymously, there's no FERPA violation, we did little like sticky notes or whatever, put down, and again, this was the self-report thing so it's totally not accurate or valid. It was the best thing we could do to have a guess, a little ballpark. So we had sticky notes where they'd say, what's your high school GPA? And when we went through this, and this is an English 091 class, I had, I think, 2 students who self-reported that they would have been below 2.6. So 2/3 of my 091 class technically could have, and some of them also said, I don't know. I'm like, we had a whole pile of sticky notes of, I don't know. So that's not helpful, but it was a little bit it correlated with the national data saying 60% of them probably could have gone into English 101. And then if I'm being brutally honest, as I'm grading my students' papers this semester, I've had this in the back of my head. I even have 2 lists going. I'm like, maybe would have done okay, probably would have done okay in 101, especially with certain supports in place.
I've been doing that on my own in my 091 classes and the 101, and I would say I can probably count on both hands out of my 4 091 classes how many would not be successful in my 101.
Yeah.
101 already has an extreme range of graders.
It does.
So that might exist in
And
more, but
as
realistically,
a counterpoint to that, I also had a very small handful of sticky notes where students said they had a GPA of 3.0 or higher, which would have put them into 101, but Accuplacer, Right Placer, put them in 091, so.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the inaccuracy of Accuplacer, right? Because we're measuring one event, right? Based on one event, which they may or may not take seriously,
Right.
did not prepare for, they're taking it cold, right? And basing on that one event, putting them in a class versus a GPA, a high school GPA is 4 years worth of data, which measures, how hard they work, maybe a grit factor or something like that. Yes, we would like to have a math GPA or an English GPA, of course, but this is all we have to go by right now, so at least it's something. And I was starting thinking, how is it that these students, if you just put them into college level to begin with, that why would they do just as good? Why would they be successful? And it may be because they're going to try harder. If they're in that college level class, they might take it seriously and try harder, but if they're in the developmental class, same class they took in high school, they might not try as hard, and they don't take it as seriously, and they may or may not come to class, they may or may not do their homework. Put that same student in a college level class, I think just psychologically, I think they might try harder. And I think that might be the key to a lot of these numbers in our strategies. I'm just...
The 10 I can count on my hand, I have no idea how to do with any Swedish support. But that's any Swedish support, I don't know.
And I think, and maybe to wrap this up, I know we're over time, so is to think that the district and the Dev Ed Council and even leadership above the Dev Ed Council has pushed us to create a soft target of 80%. So we realize we're not going to get 100%. So
I'm sorry, a soft target of 80% passing 101?
80% who are going to be able to complete that college level course within their first year. Okay? So
Complete being C and above.
C and above. All right, so we recognize there's still a contingency of students who are gonna fall and need something else, or they may have to take the class twice. But taking English 101 twice is better than taking 4 different classes before they can get there.
Right.
You know, so,
Even if they have to repeat the 09 combo course twice or once, and then repeat the college algebra combo course once, that's 4 semesters. That's still the same number of semesters it would have taken them as if we didn't do anything. And to me, that would be kind of worst case scenario. So it's got to be better. It's got to be better.
I think one of the things that's the 80% success, which is a dream, everybody should aim for that. But historically, in the Maricopa Community Colleges, in a typical 101 class, we see that 75% of our students are successful. And those are the students who actually tested into 101. And 75 seems to be that number that they've said historically we expect. So if we put students into 101 who are going to struggle and try harder, I think it's interesting that 80% is our goal. And I think what it says to me is that the suite of support really needs to be above standard.
I could agree with that portion of it, and that's where we have the greatest amount of work left to do is with the suite of support. But I think we just have to keep focusing on the fact that there's a bunch of students in this 40 to 60% pocket who will be successful. The research says even without a suite of support, a high school GPA of 2.6 or higher, they have a 75% chance of passing English 101. And that's without giving them anything else. That's the national research. So we just have to do things differently. It's going to take time to get used to it. We have to do things differently.
All right, let's thank these two. Thank you for coming out. This is absolutely a college-wide initiative where we all need to be educated on it so we can talk to our students correctly, whether we're teaching English or math or psychology or we're working in advising. So please continue the questions and dialogue. We have a great developmental education team. They are happy to assist and talk and come to your classroom. Our Learning Success Center has been here sitting quietly, and I know that they are ready to chime in and help with that student support. There's a lot of support we do have for our students, and I'm looking forward to seeing that percentage increase. So our next forum is on the 30th. We'll be talking about mapping and fields of interest in the same room at 11. All right. So please come back for that, November 30th, 11 o'clock, fields of interest and mapping, and that's our last one for this semester. Thanks, have a good Friday. Glad you came out. Happy Thanksgiving. So,